they need clothing as well, as far as, so any kind of gift cards for clothing. Like Myers or Target or something of that nature is great, or any type of dinner gift cards, because staying at, eating at the hotel all the time isn't much fun. So anything you guys want to do would be appreciated. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just gonna have you save the date for the holiday party. It's December 13th. It's a Friday. And also that just brings us to the adoptive family for this year. If anyone is interested in being a shopper for the families that we adopt from Salvation Army in Centero, please let me know. And as soon as I get all of the request forms, we'll have a meeting and get everything distributed for the shopping experience for 2024. So just thank you in advance for all your support.
Date again?
The Friday the 13th.
Maybe this will be the last announcement, we'll see. You guys received an email from me yesterday on the 125 Club. It's in reference to the Rotary's initiative to eradicate polio. For those of you who don't have a great understanding of polio, look into it, because it was something that impacted me, and I'm glad to be a part of collecting for that initiative, because it's a great thing that the Rotary has done, and hopefully we can get rid of polio. It's been a long process dating back to 1979, I believe. So yeah, appreciate any consideration to give a financial donation to join the 125 Club. There's a prize, and there's going to be multiple prizes, but the main prize is 6 load sheets to the Columbus Blue Jackets game in December against the Montreal Canadiens, I think. So it's not a hockey guy, but the games are fun. They're great seats. Thanks.
A quick one, Steve Bergen is also the chair of our scholarship committee. And so next Friday, like people that are interested in providing info on how we do the scholarships, there's been a lot of discussion about potentially changing things. Throw up hands for 7 a.m. or after the meeting next Friday for people that are interested. I guess
Steve, Rick wants to get back on the committee. He's missed it for a couple of
you
years.
want to stay after. No. All right, we'll do it at 7 a.m.
Thank you, Steve.
Calvin,
Yes.
are you ready? I thought we were doing sergeant at arms. Are you
Oh.
gonna do fine?
Yeah. David was gonna do fine.
Oh, okay. Find everybody in knowledge.
Yeah.
I can't. Okay.
We're gonna start with introducing guests, and Calvin has 2 guests today.
I think I have 3.
Three, yeah.
We have Hugh Schultz over here, kind of world famous guy. So Hugh, thank you for coming this morning. And then to my right, I have Mark Johnson, which is president of the First Citizens National Bank, which is my boss. It's a great opportunity for you to kind of provide good positive feedback for me on my behalf.
What time's the tea time?
All right, David, that's enough. Also, I have to Mark's right is Randy Decker, and she works at the PAL office with me, so she has that opportunity every day to keep me in line. So I think that's all I have.
And we have another guest today, Lane is here with us again today. Oh, yes, please introduce your guest.
Xavier.
Xavier, hey, Xavier. Hey. All right, someone bought 5 tickets and walked off without them. Does anyone want to claim these tickets real quick before we?
Remember the 4-way test.
Okay. If you realize you lost tickets, there's 5 up here. Anyway, we are gonna do fines. If you have not been to the zoo yet this year, it's $1. And our small pot today is $21 and our large pot is $164. So we will do our first drawing. I'll let you draw a ticket for us, sir. I reshuffle. All right, the first ticket is 9972986.
Oh, that's me, I think. I'm it. Bingo.
9972986. Do we have two winners?
Did they have to be in that order?
9972986. Okay, all right. Do you want small pot or large pot?
I'll do small pot. We can
Okay.
leave it to keep the.
Okay, all right, very well. We will do that. Thank you. And then large pot, would you draw one more ticket for us there? Oh, sure. Large pot is 9972992.
I know.
2992.
It's on. Be on the podium.
Oh, okay, great. Be right back. Wait a minute. Calvin. Calvin's back.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay,
Unless you want me to introduce you. You need no introduction.
I don't think so. This is, it's not working. Here we go. Is that better? Okay. And also, Tom, I just to let you know that when we were doing the drawing for the tickets, we really are accountable for how the numbers work, so. Anyhow, we are honored and happy to have the president and CEO of the Columbus Zoo with us this morning. Tom Schmid is president and CEO of the Columbus Zoo, which in addition to the zoo includes the Wilds, a 10,000 acre wildlife conservation center located in Muskingum County, Zumbizi Bay Water Park and Safari Golf Club. With a team of 400 full-time and over 1,300 part-time team members and 110 million annual operating budget, Tom and his team are focused on a mission of empowering people and saving lives. It doesn't want to work. I don't think it's going to work. There we go. Prior to his appointment to Columbus, Tom served for 20 years as president of the CEO of the Texas State Aquarium, a wildlife conservation and marine education institution, the 7th largest aquarium in the United States. After graduating with an MS degree from the University of Central Florida, he began his career at SeaWorld in Orlando in 1987. Tom then served as a director of operations in narcotics, the National Maritime Center located in Norfolk, Virginia. Tom currently serves on the board of advisors in the Columbus Partnership and on the board of the International Elephant Foundation. Tom previously served as chairman and director with the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, a council member to the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums, chairman and director for the Corpus Christi Convention and Visitors Bureau, director with Texas Travel Alliance, and a director with the Corpus Christi Chamber of Commerce. Tom was born in Miami. He grew up in South Florida, received a BS degree in biology from Stetson University, and his MS degree is from the University of Central Florida. Tom and his wife, Kim, live in the world-famous city of Powell. Without further ado, Tom Schmid.
We can try the mic for a little while. Is that, okay, I guess that is working. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's always fun to talk about the zoo and I'll talk for maybe 15 minutes or so. I want to make sure there's plenty of time if you guys have questions, but if you have a a burning question during the presentation, feel free to raise your hand and I'll be happy to answer it. So, let's see. So, Calvin mentioned briefly, the Columbus Zoo, our main campus in Powell, so about 600 acres. We're really fortunate. I guess that, yeah, it finally gave out. We're really fortunate in that we've got a lot of land around the zoo to be able to develop and create new habitats. So, you can see the Safari Golf Club, about 200 acres, our main campus, and then we've got probably at least 100 to 150 acres that we can still develop. So lots of opportunities for us in the future. As Calvin mentioned, about $110 million operating budget, lots of employees, lots of animals, and they all contribute to one mission, which is empowering people and saving wildlife. So we do focus a lot on our community engagement activities. So we have a lot of different ways that folks can access the zoo for either reduced price or essentially free admission. So we work a lot with the Columbus Metropolitan Library on a Culture Pass program. So if you go to if you're a member of the libraries in Franklin County, you can actually check out free tickets to the zoo there. We have a bus that we essentially lease from CODA to be able to bring folks from Columbus into the zoo, and you can get a discount ticket both for CODA and for the zoo. We work a lot with Columbus City Schools, so any student that is in a school where they get 50% of the kids get free lunch, they also get a free ticket to the zoo. So just making sure that we always remain really accessible to the community. Attendance, roughly 2 million a year. We did an economic impact study back in 2022, pretty significant, over 400 million in economic output. The zoo supports a lot of jobs, as you can imagine, and a lot of tax revenue for our different regions. So just an important economic driver, although our mission is primarily focused on education and wildlife conservation. So the question I get a lot is how does the Columbus Zoo rank? So I think years ago it was ranked #1 zoo in the country by some poll. A lot of these polls that are out today rely on social media metrics. So how many likes or how many people vote for you. And I think that has some merit, but this was an interesting one that just came out. This is done by a group called Morey Consultants. They work with zoos and aquariums and museums all over the country. And they look specifically at certain key performance indicators, such as attendance and Google rating, market penetration. There's a number that they come up with that they look at. And we came out #3 zoo in the country. So San Diego Zoo was #1, and Omaha's Henry Dorley Zoo was #2. And both of those zoos are pretty remarkable. So we were happy to be in the top 3 there. So we're going to do I think we're going to do a press release on this in the next week or so. But so today, #3 in the country. So we'll take it. So I started about 3 years ago, and one of the first things we did some strategic planning and really looking at our mission and our vision and what we wanted to accomplish. And you know, I mentioned the ranking because while it's important that we have we want to be one of the best zoos in the country, and I think we are, but we're really more than that. I think if you really think about what the zoo is, what our mission is, it's great to be a great zoo, but we also want to really be an impactful wildlife conservation institution. And so that really kind of is our long-term goal and vision. And every day we want to make a positive impact on people and wildlife and wild places. That's why we exist, to empower people and save wildlife. And so we do that through a lot of ways. We do a lot of education on our main campus, but we also work with a lot of partners on our conservation programming. So other zoos and aquariums, other organizations, higher ed organizations such as Ohio State. We work a lot with state and federal agencies like U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. So we know that none of the work we do can be done in a vacuum. We have to have partners working together to save animals from extinction. This is some of the places around the world where we work. We have projects all over the world. And we traditionally had done a lot of small grants to a lot of different organizations all over. We're beginning to pivot a little bit from that and beginning to focus more on specific projects that we think will have a higher impact. So this was one that was pretty interesting. So about a year ago, we launched, and no other zoo in the world has ever done this, but we launched an IUCN Center for Species Survival in country in Assam, India. So there's a few zoos that have developed the Center for Species Survival, and it's really a center where you focus on particular species and coming up with conservation action plans to try to save that animal from extinction. But typically zoos have done these at their locations and where they operate. And so we thought, well, if we really want to make an impact in Asian elephants, we've got to do this where the elephants live, not necessarily here in Columbus, or here in Powell. So we created this center. It's about $1 million commitment to get it going. We've already hired staff. We've had our first meeting where we brought in representatives from all the range countries where Asian elephants live to come together to develop plans to really mitigate. One of the biggest problems we have with Asian elephants is that there's a lot of unfortunate human elephant interactions. And when that happens, usually the elephant wins. So elephants have a tendency to migrate searching for food or water, and they may go through a village, and that can have a pretty detrimental impact on the people who live there. So trying to figure out a better way for animals and Asian elephants to coexist. That was the topic of our first meeting. So we'll continue to work through this. We're excited about this project. We've been working in Rwanda and supporting mountain gorilla conservation for probably 20 years. This was a project that Jack Hanna supported back in the late 90s, and we still do a lot of work there. There's a group called the Gorilla Doctors, and these are veterinarians who go out in the field and care for gorillas. Either they get caught in snares or get injured or maybe sick. I mean, I think about how challenging it is for our veterinarians working with our gorillas here. I can't imagine what it's like to do that work. But we've actually gone there and talked to them. I had a chance to meet with some of them last year, and they have a small clinic in Rwanda and a small clinic in Uganda, but they had nothing in the DRC. That's in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's a difficult area to work in, but if they get a report about an injured gorilla, they get in their cars, they drive 4 or 5 hours, they take care of the animal, they take all the supplies with them. Sometimes they'll sleep in their cars. So we're actually going to be building them a small clinic in the DRC so that they have a chance, or they can do their lab work, they can keep some of their materials there, they can actually, take a break and rest there. And so construction on this will start probably next year. No, actually later this year. We've got the design work complete. And it was about a $300,000 grant. But I'm amazed at what they can do with $300,000. That clinic would probably cost $3 million if you built it here, but they make their own concrete, they make their own steel. They're amazingly resourceful. So we're excited to get that going. I mentioned the snare, so it may be hard to see this, but that sort of mountain, that is actually a mountain of snares that were collected by rangers in Central Africa. So these snares, they're wire snares that are put out there to trap animals, and they can trap ungulates, they can trap anything from elephants to gorillas, and a lot of times folks will use these for bushmeat, or they'll sell the pelts or the hides. And so these rangers go out there and remove these traps, and this is the number of traps they've found so far this year. So just a remarkable. So this is one of the projects we support, is to get more training and more supplies and support for these rangers. I mentioned our work in Rwanda. So in addition to the work with mountain gorillas, and I really give Jack a lot of credit for this. I think that the team really realized early on, if you want to focus on saving a species, you can't just focus on the species. You really have to focus on the communities. And so along with the work they were doing with mountain gorillas in Rwanda, we developed this partner in conservation program where we help support communities. So we helped build this community center, the Mbwamwe Center, and we actually had a chance to tour it last year. So this is a place where kids in Rwanda that maybe have birth defects or have some other challenges can come. They can go to school there. There's a bakery there. There's a music studio there where they can learn to play instruments. There's a clinic there where moms can go for prenatal care. They're building a small farm there so they can start growing their own food. It's a remarkable facility, and we've been supporting that for 20 years along with the population and supporting the veterinarians and other folks there. So these are just some of the other partners that have helped with this project, but it was pretty remarkable what we're able to do over there. Closer to home, manatees have been a big focus of the Columbus Zoo for at least 20 years. So we created Manatee Coast, which was essentially a sanctuary where if a manatee calf is orphaned, we can take that manatee calf in, keep it at the zoo for about 2 years, grow it up till it's healthy and and then we can release them back in the wild. And we've done this 35 or 40 times over the last 20 years. There's only about 5 or 6 institutions in the country that have the facilities to be able to do this work, and we're happy to be one of them. But we realize that if we really want to make an impact in manatee populations, we've got to do more than just rescue and rehabilitate manatees. So we've just launched this program, the Wider Caribbean Alliance Network, and so the goal of this is really, so if you think about the manatees range in the Western Caribbean, we really want to bring partners from all around the Western Caribbean to come together to determine how we can make sure that the populations of manatees stay strong beyond just Florida water. So this just started. We just launched this program a couple of months ago, so we haven't scheduled our first meeting yet. But again, similar to the project that we're doing in Assam, India with elephants, again, it's bringing together governmental officials, bringing together partners, and coming up with conservation action plans to save these animals from extinction. We just hired our first conservation biologist, so Greg Lips, who was a professor at OSU, a really renowned herpetologist in this region. So in addition to the work we do all over the country, we want to make sure that we're always doing as much as we can do right here in Central Ohio. So we have a number of projects and a number of species that we focus on here. And Greg Lips is really going to help us elevate that program. So reintroducing hellbenders out into the wild. So I think just last month, we released our 1000th hellbender into Ohio rivers and streams. So trying to get that population going again, working with burying beetles and plains garter snakes and other species in our region. Out at the wilds, I'm not sure how many of you ever have been out to the wilds. A few of you. So it's essentially our wildlife conservation center and safari park. So we've got a number of threatened endangered species, and we have some species out there that are extinct in the wild, and we just hold assurance populations, such as our scimitar horn oryx. We have a great group of a strong herd of bison out there, and we just launched a new program, the Center for North American Bison Conservation. So we want to work with other indigenous populations and other constituencies around the country to begin repopulating bison and prairies around the country. So we did our first move, our relocation. So back in May, we sent 70 bison calves to South Dakota to work with the indigenous populations there to repopulate that region. So we're going to continue to work with our partners on that, and we're excited about that program. Sort of moving into the future then. So when I think about sort of the Columbus Zoo in our history, so many of you might know it started almost 100 years ago. So there were some reindeer that were brought in by the Columbus Dispatch for a program in Columbus. And once that program was finished, they needed a place to put these reindeer. So they just so happened that the city had some land in this region, and that was the beginning of the Columbus Zoo. So for the first kind of 50 years, I'll say from 1927 until the late 70s, like a lot of municipal zoos, the Columbus Zoo remained relatively small. Not a great zoo probably at that point, not a bad zoo, but a pretty typical city-run, municipally run zoo that was part of a park and rec department. And then in 1978, a guy named Jack Hanna came in and became the director of that zoo. And that really was, I think, a pretty transformational turning point for the Columbus Zoo. So he began to focus more on the animal habitats and animal well-being, guest experience, but really took the Columbus Zoo to a new level with his outreach. As many of you all know, he just had a gift for being able to connect people with animals, and that outreach really turned the Columbus Zoo into a national brand. So in addition to all that work, they were also acquiring land. Jerry Bourne came on board in the early 90s, and they really began to grow the zoo, opening more habitats, creating bigger and really impactful exhibits, and really went from, I would say, a good zoo to one of the best zoos in the country. And that was over a period from, again, 1978 until Jack retired about 4 or 5 years ago. So I call that first phase sort of Columbus Zoo 1.0, the Jack Hanna and Jerry Bourne era kind of Columbus Zoo 2.0. But now Jack, as you know, is fully retired. He's got some health issues that he's dealing with. So for the first time in 50 years, he's not really part of the zoo anymore. His legacy will continue to live on, and we are so fortunate for the work that he for what he really created. But we're now creating what we're calling kind of Columbus Zoo 3.0. So we've been working over the last 12 to 18 months on what we're calling our 2040 framework, and we're nearly complete with this. So we're excited. This is going to be a major transformation to all of our parks and properties. So beginning with the golf course, doing some improvements out there, adding some mini golf, doing some, is it working yet? Okay. How's that? Working better? And really trying to create, expand the season, at the golf course. We've got some exciting announcements, at Zoombezi Bay. I can't share them with you today because there's an embargo from the manufacturer. We're gonna do a major new attraction, and we'll be announcing it at a trade show, next month in Orlando, so you'll hear more about that soon. But then most of the work is focused on the zoo in the wild. So one of the first projects that we did, and this just opened, this was a brand new habitat for our bonobo. So traditionally, I think the zoo has done a pretty remarkable job creating habitats for the animals where they spend most of the time. For example, the Heart of Africa savanna, I think, is one of the best in North America. But sometimes where we kept the animals in the wintertime were really not ideal conditions. So our bonobos were actually being kept in the wintertime in the same place we had giant pandas 30 years ago. So the relatively small enclosures with concrete floors. We just created an entirely new indoor habitat for these animals. That's amazing. And so they've got a wonderful place now to spend the winter or any time that they don't want to go outside. Major project in our North America region. This was another project that came out of our framework. So this is about a $35 million project. The North America region was one of the oldest regions of the zoo. And so about a year ago, we started construction to transform about 2/3 of that area, new habitats for our Mexican wolf, for black bear, for river otters, for our bald eagle. That's on track to open in the spring of 2025. And that's kind of the first, along with our bonobo habitat, the first big projects coming out of our 2040 framework. So you'll continue to hear more about that. We're starting some fundraising activity to help support some of these projects, and we're doing a funding feasibility study. We actually just launched that this week. And so probably by the end of the year, we'll have a better sense of the scope and the range of what the next capital campaign might look like. The goal overall is to expand our habitats, really improve the areas where these animals live year-round, to create more year-round experiences. If I had to sort of think about the business plan of the zoo today, we're kind of a regional seasonal attraction, and most of our visitors come during the summer, or they come during wildlife or during one of our other promotions, and we want to create more opportunities and spaces and experiences for folks to come year-round and from a much broader area. Also looking at some new guest transportation options that I think will help people move around the zoo. So again, sort of in the early phases of that, we, as I mentioned, have already started construction on a couple of projects, but you'll be hearing more and more about this framework as we go forward. But pretty exciting time now, I think. So we're excited about our future. Again, Columbus Zoo 3.0. We really want to make this region, Central Ohio, the Columbus Zoo, a national destination. And I think we have that opportunity. That's really going to allow us to scale our conservation efforts even significantly more than we're doing now, which is ultimately the reason that we exist, to help empower people and save wildlife. So hopefully, I think we've got maybe a couple, 2 or 3 minutes for some questions if anyone has any. Sure.
On the heels of all this weather issues and power outages, can you just touch on what's the backup power situation that the Columbus Zoo has against these widespread power outages?
Yeah, so we've got a number of different emergency generators, and we actually have, as part of our accreditation program, we have to do drills where we make sure that we practice when things like that happen. So yeah, I mean, we know the weather's going to become more unpredictable, and we're going to continue to make sure that we're resilient and our infrastructure is ready for that. The drought in particular was a challenge, and so we ended up, for example, buying hay at the wilds much earlier than we ever had, because the pastures really were kind of fried. So things like that we're going to continue to have to prepare for in the future. But yeah, the good news is we've got a good resiliency plan in place.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Speak a bit about sharing some of your animals and things. There's always an article in the paper once in a while about, the such and such animals now being moved on. It sounds like there's a great cooperative
There is, yeah. So if you think about, for example, I'll use elephants. We own some of the elephants in our care, but really, if you look at how they're managed by one, they're managed as one large collection of animals that happen to be located in 25 different facilities around the country. So they're called species survival plans, and they're managed by our teams, our curators and keepers in zoos all across the country. We study the genetics, we track the lineage, and we make recommendations about where animals should move about. And so that program covers probably 2/3 of the animals at the Columbus Zoo. So you're right, you hear a lot about animals going in different areas, and the whole idea is that, and this is pretty fortunate for terrestrial animals, there really is no need for us to go out in the wild and collect animals anymore. We have enough animals in zoos in North America, in Europe, and we've got successful breeding programs for the most part. I'd say for probably 95% of the species, that we would never have to collect an animal from the wild again. So these animals that we care for are born in zoos, and they become ambassadors for the animals out in the wild. And it's a pretty remarkable program. There's probably 400 different SSP programs for different animals that you would find in a zoo or aquarium now. Good question. Yes.
For those that don't go to the zoo nearly every other weekend, like our family, there's a new VR exhibit that, well, it's not really an exhibit, like a VR section that went in kind of between like the carousel and the Australia area. And I'm just curious how that's been going, because we were kind of surprised to see it. And so just a little bit interested to hear about that. And then also, what in the heck are you putting next to that?
Yeah, so 2 questions. So the first one, so I was pretty fortunate. I mentioned visiting Africa last year, and we actually got to trek into the mountains and spend some time with mountain gorillas. And it is a remarkable experience to be out in the field with these animals. But I also recognize that, I mean, it's expensive, it's a long way. 99% of our population probably will never get a chance to have that experience. But with technology now, we can allow people to have something that is a pretty close complement to that. So when I tried one of these VR programs about a year ago, and there's one specifically about trekking in Rwanda with the mountain gorillas, and the director of the gorilla sanctuary program up there actually is a narrator in that area and in the VR program. And so you put on this headset and you can look around and you feel like you're in the mountains, trekking and looking for mountain gorillas. So the idea was just really to use technology to try to create experiences where folks can experience what it's like to do some of these things. There are some that you can go underwater and swim with sharks, or again, hike with gorillas and do different things. So again, we understand that there's so many advances in technology. We want to try to incorporate those and utilize those as much as we can to connect people with animals. And then right next door is going to be sort of a new food truck kind of beer garden kind of thing. So yeah, that'll be open probably in the next month or so. Yeah, so you can sit there and have a beer while your kids are in the VR program. Sounds like a good way to spend the afternoon. One more question, you bet.
A little bit about the wilds. I mean, it's a great place. I've been there before, but I talked to people about it. It seems like people don't even know it's there. So I mean, what is the zoo or the organization doing to promote the wilds, not just here in Columbus, but around the Midwest here?
Yeah, so the wilds, it's a remarkable attraction. As you know, it's not really easy to get there, but once you're there, it's a pretty amazing experience. So we are starting to broaden our marketing efforts. What's interesting is if you look at the marketing draw for the zoo and the wild actually has a much larger draw. So we pull, percentage-wise, we pull many more people from out of state to the wilds than we do at the zoo. But part of the challenge is there's so much to do out there. It's difficult to come and just spend a few hours. Most of the lodging opportunities out there are amazing, but they're relatively expensive because we don't have a lot of them. So the yurts and the lodges. So we're actually building a campground, and that'll open next spring. And we think that's going to help open up more opportunities for folks. They can bring their RV there and spend a day or two at the wild. So that'll open next spring, and we think that's going to help promote more. But we just need to get the word out. You're right. Yeah, so it's a wonderful program, and we just want more people to experience it. So I think we're one more question. Sure, please.
Okay, so you said number 3. Remind me who's number one and number two.
San Diego Zoo, and then, Henry Dorley Zoo in Omaha, Nebraska. First of all, I think we need to grow our program and our impact, so when I describe sort of if I think about the zoological community in the United States and really in North America, there's, in terms of size and scope and impact, I think number one overall is probably New York. So the Wildlife Conservation Society in New York runs the Bronx Zoo, the New York Aquarium, the Central Park Zoo, and there's several other smaller zoos. That's about $1 billion organization. They have 4,000 people out in the field doing conservation work every year. So they're on the level of the Nature Conservancy or Conservation International. Their conservation program has just grown exponentially over the last 30 years. San Diego Zoo is probably 300 to 400 million, really impactful. So it's New York, it's San Diego, and then it's everyone else. So we're sort of near the top of that list for everyone else. But I think if we can execute our strategic plan and our new framework plan, I think within the next 15 to 20 years, we can be at the level that San Diego is today. I don't know if we'll ever surpass that, but I certainly think we can get to that point. Thank you.
So we could get Warren Buffett to leave Omaha
And there's a reason why they have a pretty phenomenal zoo in Omaha, Nebraska. That's a good point. Thank you all so much.
Next week's speaker is Bill Shorthill, the District Rotary Foundation Chair for Polio Plus. Our closing quote comes from Charles Darwin: "The love of all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man." Thank you, and we'll see you next week.